In the first season of Friendship is Magic, eagle-eyed early viewers of the series noticed that two background ponies named Lyra Heartstrings and Sweetie Drops by production consistently stood next to one another in group shots. According to a layout artist on the first season of the show, the girls were placed next to each other because their colors contrasted well in crowd shots, but it was enough for fans to start joking about the two of them being in a relationship together. There was cheering, experimentation, and broken hearts every time they were seen with someone else. Lyra, who is this? But after almost a decade of rumors simmering just under the surface, there's a blink and you'll miss it shot of the girls getting engaged in the chaos of the Big Mac question, and a confirming news article in The Last Problem, making this an extremely rare example of a fan theory that was later canonized by the production team. I don't have to tell you that fan theories are a sign of health for a franchise. If fans of that thing you like are spending additional time outside of watching it to come up with their own ideas about how the world and characters operate, that's a sign that it lives rent-free in the minds of viewers long after the credits roll. I'm no exception. Two of my favorite shows, How I Met Your Mother and We As Demold, draw heavily on speculation, guesswork, and a sense of encouraged armchair psychology from viewers in a way that encourages fan interaction even during the downtime. My Little Pony is no different. A show as monstrously popular as it was, especially in the first 2 years of the 2010s, was absolutely awash in some of the most rabid theory crafting I've ever seen in a fandom, even more so after jumping into it to research for this video. A lot of it is interesting, and some of it is borderline insane, but the worst part is, some of it is fantastic, clicking so perfectly into the established canon that you have to sit back and admire the speculative attention to detail. For example, here's my favorite fan theory. You remember back in season 1 when Twilight recounts the time she was asked by Princess Celestia to hatch a baby dragon as part of her entrance exam? She struggles for a while before the sonic rain boom does its thing and allows her to finally crack it. It's an impressive feat from the perspective of we the viewers as well as Twilight's parents, but there's a theory that using magic to hatch a baby dragon wasn't supposed to be possible. The theory goes that Celestia had rigged this hatching challenge to be impossible, even for an adult unicorn, and that her entrance exam was more a secret test of character to see how applicants dealt with failure. We find out later that Celestia has a habit of planning things without her subjects' knowledge, like dropping Discord the lawn ornament on them, or Twilight's Freaky Friday pop quiz spell, so it's well within Celestia's character to do something like this. It also doubles as an efficient teaching lesson, because even if she hadn't cracked the egg, Twilight was well in need of a lesson on failure, as we see later in the series. Good fan theories enhance your appreciation of a character, even if they don't make a ton of sense under scrutiny. For example, there are some fans who like to float the idea that Sweetie Belle is Rarity's daughter instead of her sister. This is the kind of theory that was never going to be addressed in any capacity, since teen pregnancy isn't exactly a marketable concept, and Rarity's parents appearing in Sisterhood Social muddies the waters a bit. But it's also not something without precedent. The one-shot IDW comic dealing with the fallout of Twilight hatching Spike has pretty heavy undertones of a single mom trying to get an education, which is a tough read in itself. And if anyone is up to the task of raising a filly as a single mother, it's almost certainly Rarity. It's the kind of theory that makes me wish I could ask for a TV-14 spin-off series with Rarity as a single mom, because that's half a dozen episodes easy. Last month I wrote a love letter to Trixie, but that episode was so packed I couldn't make room for two of the most enduring fan theories about snobby magic horse. So let's fix that. In season 8's Granny's Gone Wild, the Golden Horseshoe Gals get some complimentary tickets to a magic show by Jackpot, one half of a famous magician duo and apparently one of the hottest unicorns around when it comes to eligible bachelors. Someone brought up his and Trixie's almost identical color palette to Jim Miller on Twitter, who confirmed that while not explicitly stated, they set up Jackpot as Trixie's possible father figure down the road should Hasbro ever decide to go in that direction. Deciding for yourself if that counts as canon is walking a really frayed tightrope that I advise at your own peril, but I think it would be pretty cool in a hypothetical 10th or 12th season to use Trixie to explore the subject of absentee parenting. The other big one involves Trixie being trans, and for this one I ran this entire section past my trans buddy Ed, who drew Conspiracy Moondancer for this episode. You should check him out. When I started watching this show, I saw a lot of art and merch of Trixie with trans flags. You know, whatever, this was already the most LGBT-friendly show I've ever been a fan of, but apparently a prevailing headcanon is that Trixie was born a stallion and transitioned before the events of the show. It's a wild theory, but I can respect the amount of research fans have put into this one. 1. Lauren Faust mentions in an offhanded tweet in 2016 that one of the characters from season 1 was meant to be trans. 2. Trixie is explicitly stated by Lauren to have been a stallion very early in development. 3. Kathleen's vocal performance gives Trixie a kind of vocal fry that some trans viewers have likened to a trans person who hasn't yet had vocal training. There's some merit to this because Kathleen Barr has a history of playing a wide range of gender-conforming and non-conforming characters. This is also the kind of point that gets me really excited that different people can have different interpretations of art, because I can guarantee you there is no way my cis ass was coming up with that interpretation on my own. And 4, viewers have pointed out that in Trixie's introduction, she's depicted with one reflection spot in each eye instead of 2, a design choice usually reserved for stallions. I am obsessed with this theory, not because I necessarily agree with it, but because that could have been an absolutely insane piece of visual coding in the series, to identify a member of an underrepresented minority in a piece of fiction released at a time in American history where we still don't talk frankly about gender identity. It's also a harder nut to crack because without doing the research, even I couldn't tell you which characters have the 1 spot as opposed to the 2. It's a design trait shared by 11 other ponies, representing an extremely eclectic mix of tertiary characters, which may explain why she started life as a one-shot, one-spot pony. I say started because in her final appearance in the series finale, she's seen rocking the double spot in addition to that sweet purple suit. It's heartwarming to notice then that this change takes place right after she makes friends with Starlight Glimmer, the first genuine friend she's ever known and the first pony to accept her for who she was. I like that a lot. There's so many fan theories in this monster of a show that if I went through all of them in detail, we'd be here all day. So let's whip through a few more of these real quick. In the middle of Friendship is Magic's run, I saw a fan theory start getting floated around that a big part of the reason Scootaloo can't fly is because her as of yet unseen parents never taught her. I think the theory was implying that neither of her parents were Pegasi, which did turn out to be partially incorrect, but I like how retroactively funny this theory is because when we eventually meet Snapshutter and Maine Allgood, they're such outlandishly disinterested, neglectful parents that I have zero problem believing that such terrible people were too busy searching for the mythical one-eyed wonder weasel or whatever to teach their child basic horse motor skills. God, they suck. I also read a theory that Prince Blueblood, the total chud rarity dates in Best Night Ever, makes a habit of deliberately showing new dates a bad time as a way of swatting away the girls who were only interested in him as a checkbook and a rung on the social ladder. It's a neat idea, especially given some of Rarity's behavior in the following season, and it's not too far-reaching that I have a hard time believing fan-based research for a side character like Blueblood. I've also heard the idea that Pinkie Pie is the only character in the show who recognizes that she's in a cartoon. I guess that stems from her comparative penchant for pop culture references and fourth wall breaking compared to the rest of the cast.
All of them? He wants all of the cakes!
But again, how does this interpretation impact the story? One of the show's biggest strengths has been its genuine what you see is what you get attitude, and any time the show tried to wink and nudge at an issue outside itself, the results were shaky at best. You do you, but it's never an idea that's worked for me. It is, however, straying dangerously close to some of the trippier, more edgy fan theories that call on darker or headier interpretations of magic and meta in the show's history. I'm not huge on these, but there is one now disproven theory prior to the release of Gen 5 that I really liked. A pre-trailer screenshot for A New Generation showed new pony Sunny Star Scout in her room decorated with Gen 4 memorabilia, including wood carvings of the main 6 from Friendship is Magic. Before it was debunked, the idea was that Friendship is Magic was a real show within the universe of A New Generation. That is insane to me, and a huge testament to the amount of hype surrounding the movie before it dropped. I understand wanting to go in a different direction, both because unnecessary metatextual cannibalism is usually the first thing a studio points to when a nostalgic new project underperforms, and because it would mean that My Little Pony and the Human Centipede franchise would suddenly have a structural similarity, and I can't live in that world. Especially when we have enough Grimdark theories as it is, including the big one brought to life as a result of the portal to Canterlot High School. For those of you somehow unfamiliar with the Equestria Girls spin-off series, Twilight Sparkle chases after Sunset Shimmer into the human world to retrieve her stolen crown. There she meets human versions of all her main friends, and even the version of herself who grew up in the human world. In fact, the only person who doesn't have a human counterpart is Sunset herself. Celestia even talks about how Sunset was a former student of hers who spent most of her life in Ponyville, but then, where is the original human Sunset? There have been some pretty dark hypothetical interpretations about Sunset having killed her human counterpart or kept her captive in a subterranean lair, which I can file with most other theories under easy enough to ignore, but if there were ever a need for a concrete conclusion to the Equestria Girls spin-off, exploring what happened to the original Sunset Shimmer, maybe even using her as a foil to show how far Pony Shimmer has grown as a person, would make a really good finale to a show that has already been everything I ever wanted. The other big grimdark theory magnet involves the magic mirror pool in Too Many Pinkie Pies, when Pinkie accidentally clones herself dozens of times in an effort to combat her first case of FOMO. Now look, I have a huge rant about this episode planned for my Halloween special, but put plainly, I am that guy in your friend group. The massive fan of dark sci-fi who will not shut the hell up about Black Mirror and the Twilight Zone. As soon as I run out of horse stuff to talk about, I move right into talking about how you absolutely have to go watch Infinity Pool or The Prestige. The philosophy of cloning is up there on my top 10 list of all-time favorite things, and that episode casually brushes past several really creepy issues that I promise I'll get to. Did they get rid of all the extra pinkies? Did they manage to keep the correct pinky? And does it really even matter? According to one theory, Twilight thought the answer to that question was a resounding no. The idea goes that Twilight, under the belief that all of the mirror pool pinky clones were functionally identical, wasn't using the paint dry test to empirically identify the real pinky. According to some fans, Twilight created the paint test to identify the pinky most capable of paying attention for long periods of time, the one who could avoid irritating and silly distractions long enough to focus on an arbitrarily chosen goal. Put simply, her preferred pinky. This is some ice-cold fan speculation, and the fact that I don't immediately dismiss it means that there's something to be said for some of these scarier fan theories. Fans of this series will theorize about anything. For years before many of the background ponies got names, fans were appointing their favorite ponies with fan nicknames over the smallest details. Derpy was given her name after a last-minute blocking change in the pilot episode left a visible animation error that had already been given the green light by Hasbro. Supervising director Jason Thiessen caught the error and liked the results so much that he didn't bother requesting an additional revision to the episode. The overwhelmingly positive fan reaction to the mistake led to a change in her official model, and the rest is history. And that's just the most famous example. After many years, Time Turner eventually adopted the long-accepted fan name Dr. Who's after the insanely popular British TV juggernaut Doctor Who. I went to college right when Friendship is Magic launched, which happened to coincide roughly with the apparently extremely popular arrival of Matt Smith as the 11th Doctor. I never watched the show, but the Brony and the Whovian in our friend group dated for several years, so those two franchises are forever mentally joined at the hip for me. DJ Pone 3, aka Vinyl Scratch, got a similar treatment after several pieces of official merchandise used both names nearly interchangeably. Bulk Biceps and Golden Harvest were given fan nicknames like Horsepower and Carrot Top long before we knew their actual canon names. Sweetie Drops was named Bon Bon after the French word for candy, all of this occurring before the show's 100th episode made a joke about the nickname in the text of the episode.
My name isn't Bon Bon. It's Special Agent Sweetie Drops. I work for a super secret anti-monster agency in Canterlot.
You also have these harmless things called headcanons, ideas that exist only in your head about how a character might identify or see themselves. These usually take the form of sentences like Pinkie Pie is black or Twilight is neurodivergent. There are a couple of different reactions to headcanons like this, from man, way to make My Little Pony woke, which is extremely incorrect, to Pinkie isn't white or black, she's pink, which is less wrong but still missing a lot of the nuance required in dealing with issues of that nature. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in a video about coded characters in this show, because there is a lot going on there. There aren't a lot of fan theories out there that I actively dislike, and even fewer that I downright hate, but all of my least favorite theories commit one or more of the following three sins. 1. The theory exists to square a story problem that already has a perfectly reasonable canon solution. See the theory that Ponyville must be a nudist colony because why else would they be walking around buck naked when ponies from Canterlot, who have significantly more money to blow on luxury horse goods like clothes, walk around wearing dresses and petticoats? 2. The theory ignores satisfying canon aspects of the show in favor of significantly less interesting what-if scenarios. I used to give a pass to the idea that Discord was fake betraying Ponykind in Season 4 in order to benefit all the friends he'd made because it was born in an era well before the Grogar incident, but man, you're telling me that's more interesting than one of the most well-acted scenes of repentance in the entire franchise from a veteran of film and television just because you thought a Batman Gambit would be cool? That bugs the crap out of me, but not quite as much as 3. Adding in heavy themes like abuse and suicide into an established, accessible franchise for seemingly no reason. I find myself nowadays in the small minority of people who were turned way off by the big gotcha moment from 2017's dating sim Doki Doki Literature Club. I'm not going to show or mention the moment in question, but the game's 6 years old, so you probably already know the moment I'm referring to. It's my opinion that if you're going to trot out sensitive topics like abuse and self-harm next to my cute little pony show, you better have a damn interesting reason to be entertaining heavy topics like that. This rant was brought to you by the theory out there that Pinkie Pie and her sisters experienced childhood trauma at the hands of their parents, and that's why they're all different levels of despondent, angry, and withdrawn. That sucks. God forbid we have an eccentric family of sisters without introducing a abuse subplot. I have a bit of an issue with clinging to these pipe dream fan theories that balloon outside the scope of the universe they were born into. Right when I was getting into the fandom, someone offhandedly mentioned the idea that Celestia and Discord had dated a long time ago, and it's been living rent-free in my brain ever since. Can you imagine how awkward seeing your ex at the mall would be if you and your ex were both effectively immortal? That's ages and ages of old history between the two of you that could make for a really good exploration of a failed relationship between two completely opposite characters physically incapable of moving on. As far as I can tell, the idea was floated as far back as season 2, and the only real evidence towards it is this quick shot of Discord giving Celestia flowers, but I guarantee you someone has already mined that idea far better than I ever could. It also brushes up against a sensitive topic in the fandom regarding the canonness of romantic relationships that I think I have to address, and I'm begging you to hang on while I try to explain myself. Being recognized as canon is really, really hard. A couple years ago, I watched The Legend of Korra for the first time, and literally the only thing that I knew about the show was the one piece of information I had absorbed from all the fan discussion I overheard in college: that Korra and Asami are a thing. So, prepping anyone listening for Legend of Korra spoilers, I got to the last episode of the series expecting some sort of kiss, or a declaration of love, something. And then, in the final minutes of the series, Korra and Asami walk hand in hand into the newly opened spirit portal. That's it? I cried, confused at the anticlimax of it all. But across the board, the response I got was a measured, what did you want them to do? Start furiously making out? And you know what? They have a point. Setting aside the concession that LGBT relationships are already inherently under considerably more scrutiny to be considered canon, canonness as a quality is much more fluid than I like it to be. It rubs me the wrong way when I hear things like Apple Dash is probably canon. It's one of my very few controversial takes, but to me, being canon is less like a thermostat and more like a light switch. Either it's been stated explicitly in the text or confirmed by the showrunner or other creative authority, or it's completely up for speculation. It's a tough bar to clear, but not counting the main 6 parents, here are what I consider the truly canonical couples in Friendship is Magic: Princess Cadance and Shining Armor, Mr. and Mrs. Cake, Big Mac and Sugarbelle, Cranky and Matilda, Lyra and Bonbon, Quibble Pants and Clear Sky, and that's it. I'll explain how I feel in a minute, but I can't bring myself to count Vinyltavia, Starburst, Fluttercord, Apple Dash, or even Cheese Pie as canon. Treating canonicity like a light switch is easily the hottest take I have about the show, but I want you to know that a relationship can be judged on the strength of its setup and evidence as much as it can by having it shown matter-of-factly in the series finale. You also don't need both in order to get fulfillment from a ship. Imagine an alternate line during that emotional payoff in The Last Problem. Sorry I'm late, but it is so hard to find a sitter with a sense of humor for Little Cheese, the child I had with my husband, Cheese Sandwich. I know that I'm gonna get people in the comments arguing about my stance on this, and that's fine as long as you're civil about it, but I'm trying to make it as clear as I can that canonness should not be the singular goal of every fan theory ever made. I take this sort of canon purist stance because I came here from the Five Nights at Freddy's fandom, a group of fans enjoying a game series that, for better or worse, hinges a lot of its appeal on figuring out what the next drop in the lore bucket means for a story web that's frankly too involved for its own good. I like the Five Nights series because the original trilogy was dripping in atmosphere and ambiguity, so you'll forgive me if I stay at arm's length from the lore police when it comes to determining whether something in my favorite pony show is canon. All I can judge these on are the level of setup and care they received, so if you were looking for my actual opinion, here you go. I'm completely fine with Apple Dash. They had nearly a dozen scenes of competitive tension together throughout the series that I don't bat an eye whenever someone says they're together. Same goes for Pinky and Cheese. Even though they only share 2 episodes together, you could power a small country with their chemistry, and the combination of Little Cheese and Weird Al being allowed to ride on Big Best Boy is okay by me. I don't think there's anything between Starlight and Sunburst. Just because I married my high school sweetheart doesn't mean everyone does, and they don't even live in the same city. Same goes for Vinyl and Octavia, who live together but don't appear to have a ton of chemistry in the one scene they share together. And Fluttercord... Okay, look. Here's the exact second I found out Fluttercord was a thing. And I remember immediately thinking that she was way too good for him. Now I'm a couple years older and wiser, and I at least understand why they're a good fit. I don't personally think there's anything romantic there, mostly because given how long his reformation took, I'm not 100% sure Discord knows what romantic love is. Thanks for watching. I'm sorry this episode sort of ballooned out of control there at the end. There's more than enough material out there to do a second episode on fan theories in the future if you'd be interested. Right now I've got a less heavy episode cooking for the winner of the September poll, so it should be out in a couple of weeks. In the meantime, thanks for watching.